Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Socorro, Texas. It's January 7th, 2025, 5:31 p.m. We call this meeting to order.
Thank you, Mr. Arroyos. And good afternoon all. Item number 2, establishment of quorum. Andrew Arroyos,
Here.
Enrique Cisneros,
Here.
David Estrada,
Here.
Julie Dominguez, absent. Osvaldo Reza,
Here.
Yolanda Rodriguez.
Here.
We have quorum with 5 commissioners present. Moving on to item number 3, open forum. Alfredo, do we have anyone that would like to speak?
Not at the moment.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Andrew Arroyos to approve. Second by David Estrada. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 5, consider and take action on the approval of master plan and variance request for section 46-631 off-street parking requirements for a reduction in parking space requirements of 1 space per 400 square feet of net leasable office space and 1 space per 5,000 square feet of net leasable warehouse area, and a variance request from section 46-451, general regulation of a 50 feet maximum allowable building height instead of the 45 feet maximum allowable building height for Hermanos Industrial Subdivision, being all of Track 6 and Track 6A, Block 2, Socorro, Socorro, Texas. Mr. Botello?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jose Botello, planner with the City of Socorro. Item number 5 on the agenda is the Hermanos Industrial Subdivision Master Plan and Variance Request. Some general information on this master plan and variance request. The property address is 11,051 North Loop Drive. Property owner is Hermanos Farms LTD. The representative is Green Law Partners. Lot size for this property is 99.23 acres. The current zoning for the property is ICMUD, and the current land use for this property is agricultural. And so once again, the summary of the request is for approval of a master plan and a variance request from section 46-631 off-street parking requirements for a reduction in parking space requirements of 1 space per 400 square feet of net leasable office space and 1 space per 5,000 square feet of net leasable warehouse area, and a variance request from section 46-451 general regulations for a 50-foot maximum allowable building height instead of the 45-foot maximum allowable building height for the Hermanos Industrial Subdivision. And some background on this master plan and variance request. The applicant is requesting approval of the master plan and variance request, and a master plan is required when the development is proposing a zoning change of a property over 5 acres in size. This is in accordance with section 38-7.3 master plan required, subsection 2. And the zoning approval for this development was approved by City Council at their February 1st, 2024 meeting. And so on the next slide, you'll see the staff recommendation. So staff is recommending approval of the master plan for Hermanos Industrial Subdivision with the condition that an updated TIA be submitted in accordance with section 38-59.3 standards 4 and timing of traffic impact analysis, subsection A, TIA and update required. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from section 46-631 off-street parking requirements for a reduction in parking space requirements of 1 space per 400 square feet of net leasable office space and recommends approval of one space per 2,500 square feet of net leasable warehouse area instead of the one space per 5,000 square feet of net leasable warehouse area being requested. And staff recommends approval of the variance request from section 46-451, general regulations for a 50-foot maximum allowable building height instead of the 45-foot maximum allowable building height for Hermanos Industrial Subdivision. And so on the next slide, you'll see the location map. The property is situated, or it's abutting North Loop Drive. The following slide will show the zoning map. The purple overlay on the property denotes the ICMUD zoning district. And these were a couple of pictures taken from North Loop Drive and Clems Road. And then the aerial photo showing the lot enclosed in the thick yellow line. And this is the first traffic impact analysis that was submitted for the rezoning of this property. And so this is the study site area. The TIA is being requested to be updated due to the fact that this shows 2 warehouses and 2 entrances to this development. And then this slide, part of the traffic impact analysis is for the AM peak hour traffic counts for this development, followed by the PM peak hour traffic counts. And this is the development schedule that was submitted for the Hermanos Industrial Subdivision development, which is anticipating completion in August of 2027, I'm sorry. Followed by the development plan showing the updated intent for this development, showing a total of 3 warehouses and 3 entrances to this subdivision. The next slide will go into a little bit more detail on the square footage for the warehouses and the parking space requirements. And so once again, the summary of the request is for approval of a master plan and variance request from section 46-631 off-street parking requirements for a reduction in parking space requirements of 1 space per 400 square feet of net leasable office space and 1 space per 5,000 square feet of net leasable warehouse area, and a variance request from section 46-451 general regulations for a 50-foot maximum allowable building height instead of the 45-foot maximum allowable building height for Hermanos Industrial Subdivision. And at this time, staff can answer any questions. We also have Mr. Jorge Azcarate from the CEA Group present to answer any questions as well.
So just to be clear, this already passed through city council, so it's gonna get built either way, with or without the variances, right? I mean, if we don't pass the variances that they want, they're still gonna build it. There's nothing stopping them from building, right?
The rezoning was approved, yes, back on the 1st of February of 2024. And this is, the master plan requirement is due to the fact that the property is over 5 acres. And according to our subdivision ordinance, chapter 38, it's required, it's part of the requirements when the plats are submitted. So you'll see the preliminary and final plats for the Hermanos Industrial Subdivision very, very soon.
So it's pretty much the same variances that the previous ones have been asking for, pretty much, right?
Similar, yes, sir, correct.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a question. So, I was remembering today, is there an ordinance, I was trying to pull it up on business parking, right? And I don't remember it word for word, and I couldn't find it, but if it was something to the effect of, any business has to provide enough parking for the employees plus visitors, right? Or, clients, customers of that business. Does anybody remember what that ordinance is, or am I remembering incorrectly? And
So the parking requirements are based on the use, and that's why they're asking for this request.
Mhm.
The type of use is, and if you go back and pull up I think Jose includes it. So this is what the requirement would be for this type of use?
Mhm. And let me kind of what my train of thought is. I don't think we're gonna have an issue, I don't have an issue with the height, I don't have an issue with the parking. What I'm thinking is, does code enforcement have the tools that they need? And we've addressed it a number of times, so long as it goes from, if it goes from logistical to manufacturing, then that changes the occupancy certificate, they'll have to come back.
And they would have to come back and they would have to adjust the parking to adhere to the new requirement.
Correct,
So if that involved tearing down a part of the building in order to accommodate more parking, then that's what they would have to do.
yeah,
The parkings in here, some of them are for the trailers, so reducing those, reconfiguring those so that you would have more parking for smaller vehicles. They might be able to accommodate what would be required in the future for that type of use.
correct,
But they would need to adhere to that requirement for
Occupancy certificate.
manufacturing,
Yeah.
or if they convert into something completely different and out of the box, we'd have to come up with that parking calculation.
correct. What I was thinking out loud, or I'm thinking out loud right now, usually what'll happen is the business certificate is an annual thing, right? So I'm just trying to see if anybody remembers what that ordinance is. So that, let's say if halfway through the year it changes, there's really no reason to make the change until we have to renew that business license. Does code enforcement, and I'm not using this specific one as an example, but the question is, does code enforcement, and is there, I remember there being an ordinance, but I can't say verbatim what it says, that do they have the tools to address that based on one of the ordinances that I can briefly remember? And maybe I can bring that up on Commissioner's report, that we can see if staff can look into that for us. But if nobody knows it off the top of their head, then that's okay. I was just thinking out loud. That was my only question.
Parking would always need to be addressed at any point there was a change in occupancy, or the type of use of the business. So an annual renewal of a business license, if it's the same business, it's getting renewed, we would know. It would be when the change occurs that we would have to address.
Correct.
Or if the building were being reconfigured because they had, instead of one tenant, two tenants, and now they're
Or a
adding
new
more
permit.
office space.
Yeah, or new permits, things like that.
So those would be two instances where we could address parking and reevaluate the parking requirements. But these are for this particular use.
Thank you. Ready to make a motion?
When did planning and zoning vote on the rezoning of this parcel?
It was several months prior to when it went to city council. Planning and zoning did deny the request. The applicant, I'd have to go back and look for the exact date, but planning and zoning did vote to deny the request. And it was several months after that it went to city council for their vote.
Do you guys remember this one?
I remember it.
thought-
That's why I asked the question. It's passed already through city council, so.
The zoning changed
I
it.
thought we were looking on that one that was denied. The one where I remember voting for denial, I thought we were looking at the Pecan Orchard across North Loop Street from this one.
No, it's this one. This is the
It was this
only
one.
one that has come to planning and zoning for consideration of rezoning, and it was A1 to the ICMUD. The portion that's, I don't know, you want to say west or north of North Loop.
And so the one across the street, that Pecan Orchard, that one never
That's
came
still
up?
agricultural, but it is for sale, and
That
it
one's never come up for rezoning?
has not come up to planning and zoning for,
And that would
for
be the
rezoning.
one south of North Loop? Am I correct? Why am I
Yes.
thinking it was south of North Loop?
This one is the one on north?
Mm-hmm.
North of
The other
North
one
Loop.
that you're thinking about is south.
is south.
Yeah, so
So
it-
this is the one that
Jose
planning and
has
zoning
pulled up
voted
the aerial.
denial.
Yeah,
Okay,
And then went to city council and passed, so.
yeah. And so now you're asking for the variance on the parking and then the building height,
yes.
correct? Okay, so I guess we've hashed out the rezoning then, where we voted, and now it's just the variance.
What, does anybody remember why it was turned, like,
Because
what
it
was
in-
the issue? Like,
it-
why?
It was in between two residential and with
Yeah.
the traffic on North Loop and stuff like that. That was part of it, but
Mm-hmm.
other than that,
The master plan shows the addition of buffering to address some of the neighborhood concerns. So they are going to preserve the trees around the property and abutting the residential. And they have included a deceleration lane for, and Mr. Escarate can better address those. They have added additional items to the development to assist in some of the concerns that were brought up at planning and zoning.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jorge Escarate with CA Group for the record. Just wanted to point out, I guess when it initially came across this board, it was a different end user. And some of the recommendations that staff had wanted, the previous end user was not updating the site plan, was not incorporating the recommendations from staff, which is exactly what Ms. Camino said, is preserving a landscape buffer between the property and the residential, preserving some vegetation along the frontage of North Loop so that it doesn't become an eyesore, so at least you have a buffer and you have some vegetation to protect it. In addition, working with TxDOT in dedicating additional right-of-way to the city of Socorro. So whenever the widening of North Loop it gets materialized, the city of Socorro already has that right-of-way and can hopefully move that project a lot faster. When it got denied, then obviously the previous individuals walked away. A new end user came in, and actually this is the plan in working with staff, working with city council, incorporating all the comments from staff. We've incorporated all the comments that staff has recommended, which is the landscape buffer, which is the additional deceleration lane, actually having a turning lane, doing a traffic impact study. Actually, the previous end user did not submit a traffic impact study as required by your code, and that's one of the reasons that it was denied. As part of this, we actually did a traffic impact study for the property owner and the current user, and some of the recommendations are to create a turning lane on North Loop so that if any vehicle that is turning into the facility allows the through traffic to move forward while they go into this turning lane. Those are some of the recommendations in working with staff that we're actually able to incorporate into the site plan. And that's why we're here before you is, one, it's required by the city code, like Jose said, to do a master plan. And at this point, we're also asking for a variance. You've probably seen a lot of the buildings that are going up. They are in that 45 to 50-foot range. And then the parking, I think, and I think Ms. Camino and Jose can attest to this. Right now, the city of Socorro's parking requirements for like industrial is really focused like on a shopping center, which would really have a lot of gray area, a lot of blacktop and unused parking. And so we've kind of simulated, allow these parking to what, like, the city of El Paso has, because they do have broken down into industrial or warehousing, separate from a shopping center, and I think your all's code right now groups everything all together.
And that is on Jose's to-do list to go ahead and bring some parking reduction recommendations parking amendments to the code requirements, and that we probably can address those now and not need to wait on the whole UDC code rewrite. So
And I-
hopefully soon we should be coming with some recommendations, and we won't have to address these with variances.
And I think all the ICMUDs that you all have been before you, they all have been asking for variances because of the enormous amount of parking that the current code states, which is out of the norm.
I do have a question for you. I'll need staff's help. The ordinance for commercial, it's what, 50 feet from the street to the nearest building? Is
The
that what it is?
setbacks
Correct.
for
For-
Horizon, this will be 60 feet?
This is for North Loop.
Sorry, North.
I think it's 60 or 70, because it depends on the type of roadway it is, if it's a
If it's a major
collector or an arterial.
if it's-
Right, I just don't remember off the top of my head, but we do exceed that requirement.
What's the distance from North Loop as it exists right now to where you guys are planning to have the nearest building on North Loop? If you have a ball.
If, I want to say, looking at that map, it's probably about 180 feet. If I can zoom in, hold on. The building, that's, oh, sorry. And that's what, I forgot what that is. That's 5110. So you're looking about 245, 250,
So even
to the
with
face of the building.
Because let's say the future expansion of North Loop, double roadway in a middle, what does that look like? But it sounds like there's enough there.
It would still be about.
And that's
200,
just,
no?
that's to the landscape, not to North Loop. You add the landscaping, you're probably adding another 30 to 40 feet, so you're probably about a 280 minus the 35 feet. We're still like in that 250 range.
Okay. I don't have any questions.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you talk about the turning lane going into the development,
Yes, ma'am.
but what about the vehicles coming out of your establishment? Because as it is right now, the infrastructure down North Loop, it doesn't accommodate the traffic that we have going up and down, especially because you have residential areas both on your right and on your left.
Correct.
And you've got a school just down the road from there. So what are we looking at as far as after you have your development?
Mhm.
What year are we looking at that you're gonna be completed? And then, of course, we're looking at widening the road, but we're looking at another 5 years, I think, you know, in
So-
order to widen the road from North Loop. So we're looking at traffic, and we're looking at semi-trucks, not just vehicles. We're looking
That's correct.
that are
it's,
coming out of your
Facility.
development.
Mhm.
I think that would be one of my biggest concerns. I understand that the master plan has already been approved by city council, but I think also that, that there has to be some kind of a zoning criteria that kicks in before the widening of the road. I mean, I understand you have a turning lane going in, but what about the rest of us that are going down the road and your traffic is coming out?
so the traffic coming out, I mean, it's gonna be going into North Loop, you know, mostly, you know. We do have deceleration lanes that we're gonna be installing in North Loop to try to get the traffic out as they lead into the facility. In talking about the widening, I can't speak to that because I know TxDOT, I believe, has completed a traffic study or a feasibility study from Horizon to Fabens, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, I don't think that extension all the way to Fabens justifies it, but I think they're looking more now from Horizon to Clint, which is FME 1110, would be that what they're looking at widening. Now, how you get that project to fruition and a lot closer is acquiring the right-of-way. So these are federalized projects. TxDOT goes and seeks federal funding. In order to get the federal funding, they turn around to the local municipalities and say, then you need to find your 20% match. Most of the time, that 20% match is right-of-way acquisition. Either the city has to spend dollars to acquire the right-of-way throughout the corridor, or if they've already obtained the right-of-way by platting, what we're doing now is dedicating, we don't dedicate it to the TxDOT, we dedicate it to the city. So whenever the project is getting closer and TxDOT says, hey, city, Socorro, we're ready, bring your match, the city can say, we've already acquired by platting or whatever means of securing this right-of-way, so we're a lot closer to getting that project. We've agreed, because this property owner is also the same property owner to the south of the one that you were talking about, the Pecan. He's agreed to also dedicate the additional 30 feet on the south side to try to get that project moving forward. As you all did the development, a couple residential developments to the east of this, you all have already secured right-of-way in those developments. Stuff that we're doing right now closer to Clint, we're doing some other developments out there, we're already dedicating right-of-way to either the county or through town of Clint that will now start getting closer to, you know, that FM 1110. So there's gonna still be pieces that I think the city will have to acquire, but it's gonna have to be way less than having if we don't plat, if this project goes away, then the city's gonna have to spend their dollars to go acquire the additional 30 feet for the length of it on both sides. And right now, we're looking at dedicating that to the city.
And also, I think that even though we, as a commission, have approved certain buildings that exceed the variances, I think we also, if I can recall, is that they haven't been between two residential areas that are so populated. I think most of them have been out yonder or off of I-10, where you don't have that residential area, just for a note.
Well, we did coordinate at the top of the rezoning with the residents adjacent, and at the time of rezoning, there was no objection. And the city did mail out, and there were some people there, we coordinated, we talked, and there was nothing that was objected to the development.
Okay. Righty, thank you.
Thank you.
And I do want to just add that something that will help us with the North Loop traffic in breaking up the flow of traffic is the traffic signal that is coming in on Bowman and North Loop. So that will assist right now for this, for the traffic. And we're going to start looking at the new MTP, the El Paso Metropolitan MPOs, Major Thoroughfare Plan, and start having those discussions about what our next big projects are and what we can push for with the feasibility study being there. Maybe this first, if the North Loop project is broken out into phases, what the city, if the city is interested in pushing this phase, this first section of, say, Horizon to Bowman, or whatever that first phase might look like, maybe this is one way we can push to have that looked at and placed on that long-range transportation plan.
Right,
But the potential of getting funding.
If I recall, I think the signal lights were supposed to be started on, what, December the 14th?
The last update I had, they were delayed, and they were gonna start moving dirt and start mobilizing, and they were just waiting on materials.
Okay.
So I will try to reach out to TxDOT again, maybe later next week, to find out if there's any more information on that.
Yeah, I just haven't seen anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just talked to TxDOT 2 days ago on that one, because we have another project working on Baldwin, not ICMUD. And actually, that traffic signal light got packaged with a bunch of other projects. So a contractor has received the project, they have not started, but it's part of like, there's like 20 projects in that plan set. So I'm not sure when they're gonna get to the traffic signal. And we talked to Martin Sotelo at TxDOT, and that's what he was telling us. And I was able to download the plans, because we're coordinating, as you know, a development that we're doing right there in Ballman, so,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
I'm ready to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve
Second.
with staff recommendations.
I have a motion made by Andrew Arroyos to approve with staff recommendations and second by Enrique Cisneros. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Abstain.
Any abstain?
Abstain.
Motion carried. Moving
Thank you.
on to thank you. Moving on to item number 6, consider and take action on the election of officers for Planning and Zoning Commission. Ms. Quimito?
Thank you, Yadira. At this time, we would like to begin the elections for officers for Planning and Zoning Commission. That would be for the chairman and vice chair. Are there any nominations for the chair?
I nominate Mr. Andrew Arroyos.
I second.
We have a nomination by Enrique Cisneros and a second by Ms. Rodriguez. Want to take the vote, Yadira?
Yes, I have a motion made by Enrique Cisneros to appoint Andrew Arroyos, second by Yolanda Rodriguez. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Moving on.
To the vice chair, would anyone like to make a nomination for the vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Mr. David Estrada as vice chair.
I second.
I have a motion made by Enrique Cisneros to appoint David Estrada as vice chair, second by Andrew Arroyos. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quimito. Now moving on to item,
Oh, we have a second vice chair. I apologize.
Well, I appoint Mr. Cisneros.
I'll second.
Is he trying to get out of there?
do we have a second?
I second.
I have a motion made by Yolanda Rodriguez to appoint Enrique Cisneros to second vice chair, second by Osvaldo Reza. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain?
I'll abstain just because I feel too cocky to vote for myself. To vote for myself.
Thank you. Now we have the secretary.
Secretary?
So the fourth position, it's chairman, vice chairman, second vice chairman, and the secretary is appointed by the staff.
Yeah, true, the secretary.
Same. I recommend, to stay the same.
Make a recommendation to keep everything the same.
I
For-
second.
Yeah, thank you.
And do I just make the motion?
Is it an appointment or is it an election?
Yeah, it's appointed by the staff, this
Okay.
department.
Okay.
This is-
It's just an appointment.
And we, staff appoints Okay, I apologize. Now we will be moving on to the next item. Number 7, consider and take action on the bylaws of Planning and Zoning Commission. Ms. Camito?
Thank you, Yadira. At the request of Ms. Julie Dominguez, at the last meeting, we forwarded the bylaws to the Planning and Zoning Commission and asked for any comments, response that we could share ahead of the meeting, and we didn't receive any. So if anybody would like to bring up any items for discussion or consideration right now, we can, or if the bylaws are good as they stand, we can accept them.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
On Article 7 under voting, so dealing with quorum, if we have 2 people present on site and 1 person present on call, on video, on conference, or that constitutes a quorum, correct? 3 people present, 2 present physically, and then 1 on the phone. Does that
so you need-
constitute a quorum?
Yeah, so you need actually 3 present in person. And it may not be reflected in the bylaws, but this happened after COVID, as the Texas Attorney General came out in opinion because a lot of people were appearing remote. So I think at first they allowed less people in person, and then when they wanted people to come back, they changed it. So they said, no, you need to have a majority present in person.
Present in person in order to
In
have
person,
a-
yes.
in order to have a quorum and in order to be able to vote, right? In order to continue with the meeting.
That's right, yeah.
And you lose quorum if they go to the restroom, step out of the building, or step out of the space, right?
Yeah, so, well, yeah, you could lose quorum, but then it's just to start the meeting. So as long as, let's say you have 3, I think we have total 5 or 6 here. Is it 6?
It's a full 7, but we only have 6
Okay.
filled.
Okay. Well, you need a majority in person to start. And then if you have extra people on the video, as long as you have enough to do a vote, you can actually, I think, step out or abstain or whatever. It's just to start the meeting. The other issue too is that, this doesn't happen with you guys, but it happens with city council some, is that if you're gonna appear by video, again, the Attorney General had very specific rules, like, you gotta show your face. So you can't take off the video if you're gonna appear on video. And then actually technically, I don't even think you're supposed to mute yourself. Cause sometimes people are doing other things or there's background noise, but if you're gonna be there, you gotta show your face the entire time, and it's gotta be, not muted. So that happens a lot because I think you can lose quorum that way, is if you don't show your face. And if you guys ever watch city council, Mr. Darte will sometimes say something to somebody who's on the video, right? Like, hey, you can't.
Most meetings.
Even if you put your face to the side like this. You're having a sip of, coffee or something.
Do we need to change our bylaws to reflect these virtual meeting rules? Or do you think those virtual meeting rules will go away and people will be required to meet in person again?
No, we don't have to change this because they continually change things through Attorney General opinions every year on everything, not just, just on open meetings in general too, they can do things. So this is kind of just like your basic rules in place. But they're always superseded, which is the state law governs actually, over this.
I have a question. Should we change the number from 7 to 6? Because then that would mean we would need 4 people present instead
I
of
don't
3.
think we've had an issue with quorum. I don't think
Yeah.
that's impacted. And the other thing that the bylaws allow for is 2 alternates to be, and that's under Article 1, Membership B. 2 alternate members may also be appointed by the mayor. So we also have that option. I'm getting ready to send an email to all of the city council members regarding their board appointments and the new city council representatives about any board appointments that they need to make. And I can bring that up, that it would be nice to be able to fill those alternates on the outside chance that we need them.
And then to also answer your question on the number of commissioners, so we have it here in the bylaws, but it's also then in the city code. It usually mirrors it exactly word for word. So if you change it here, then you gotta change the code. We dealt with it on the Board of Adjustments. It didn't happen with you guys here, but we couldn't get enough people. So then we had to change the bylaws, we had to go, but then you have to do the first reading and the second reading and post it and then for comment. And then the last thing I was gonna say, this is just more of a political thing, but if you change the number of appointments, then somebody gets upset about it, cause they're like, well, the mayor gets so many and the commissioners get so many, then why'd you take away my, person I get to put, so it's a little of a political thing too, but.
Sounds good.
So we need 3 out of the 6 or 3 out of the 7 present in order to have quorum and in order to vote. There's 7 positions available, but only 6 are filled right now, correct?
Right,
And so long as 3 people are present,
Yes.
yeah.
then we have quorum, we're able to.
Yeah, 3 in person, so that's why we always
3 in
wait
person.
in person, we always wait at the beginning, to make sure there's 3 of you guys here. And then if extra people show up, that's great, even if it's online.
And so what happens, okay, so the meeting starts with 3 people present on site, but one of those someone has to leave, emergency or whatever. What happens at that point? Which I don't think that's ever happened, but what?
You're
The
saying
meeting
3 in
ends?
person, but nobody online?
Well, no, let's say 3 people start the meeting, 3 people present on site, but there's an emergency and I need to step out and go home.
And the meeting ends?
Does the meeting continue at that point, or?
The meeting ends?
Yeah, so
We
then
don't
you
have
lose
quorum anymore.
quorum, yeah.
You lose quorum, so
Yeah.
and I don't, it's never happened, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you're cutting it very close, if you only have 3 and you lose those 3, then it's an issue.
Okay. All right,
I have a question. So I think in the bylaws, and I think we talked a little bit about it the last meeting, about the calendar days. And I think in the bylaws, it says that we have to have at least 10 meetings. I read it somewhere in there. So I think that when we talked about it the last time, we were trying to get on the same calendar as the city council. And I looked at the calendar for them for 2025. And they're completely all out for the whole month of December.
Because they set their their 1 December meeting in November.
Okay,
So they do have 1 meeting for December.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're not usually, if it's not calendared, and they haven't had a first city council yet for this year, have they,
No.
for January? So, because they'll probably go over their calendar too, but they always have a meeting in December, because I know, because we always have to do some legal issues, but there's always some business to happen right before the holidays.
Okay. So then I guess it brings me back to the calendar for us for this coming year, or for this year.
Yes.
Is, we have a meeting that is the week before Christmas.
Mhm.
So I would like to either bump it up.
Okay. So that is item number 8, the 2025 meeting calendar. That doesn't, deleting or moving that meeting doesn't require changing the bylaws.
Okay.
So before we move to the calendar, were there any other comments regarding the bylaws? A motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve and leave the
or not
bylaws
to
as
approve?
is.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I
Second.
I have a motion made by Andrew Arroyos to approve bylaws as is, and second by Yolanda Rodriguez. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 8, consider and take action on the 2025 Planning and Zoning Meeting Calendar. Ms. Quimito?
Thank you, Yadira. So, to address 2 things that you brought up, the coinciding with the city council is more in reference to the December,
Okay.
right? So we can move that second meeting in December up a week, with the option, if there aren't no items, then we can delete it. But it would be staff recommendation to keep the 2, just in case we do need them, because we'd never know what our applications may look like, and it would be better to have it and not need it, and then need it, not have it.
So is that an item that we could reconsider, like sometime in November?
Of course,
Or?
yeah,
and
but we
then
can,
could
we
look
can
at
move
that
it now.
then? Okay.
Is that the 20?
16.
So as it currently is posted, it is December 2nd and December 16th,
Right.
and we can move it up to December 9th.
Are you, is the rest of the commission good with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Okay.
Were there any other amendments to the calendar? Okay.
So.
Yeah,
make a
Dina,
motion
do you want to take, do we need a motion, or?
I have it as a motion, but I can read out the suggested change.
Mhm.
A motion to approve change of the meeting on December 16th to December 9th was approved. All those in favor of the motion?
I make a motion.
Does need a motion and a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, to approve the calendar with the change from December 16th to December 9th.
So, Mr. Arroyos?
So I make a motion to approve from moving our meeting from the 16th to the 9th on December.
I'll
Thank-
second.
Thank you, Mr. Arroyos, for repeating that. I have a motion made by Andrew Arroyos to change the meeting on December 16th to December 9th, second by Osvaldo Reza. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 9, Planning and Zoning Commissioners Report.
Just
Mr. Cisneros?
a couple of things. Mr. Body, just real quick, when we're voting down, something we're voting on, we have to, if it was voted down as a commission, we have to report why it was voted down, right? And really, if I remember correctly, the only way that the state of Texas allows us to deny, one of these items is when it's not part of the future land use map, right? Does that sound familiar?
You're probably referring to plating,
But not the final plat.
plat applications.
Okay.
Preliminary, final plat applications, we are very limited in what we can deny. And when we do deny, we have to state why we're
Why we're
making
doing
that denial. Those are for plat applications.
And you're right, yeah, and then it needs to be actually in writing that if you deny it, you have to specifically say why it was denied. City council as well too has to, I think, do the same thing.
Okay. And what we were doing with Hermanos Industrial, that was just changing the master plan, not changing the plan?
That was just the master plan application.
So it just
That's a
as background.
preliminary to the preliminary and final plan.
Okay, so that was the first thing, and then
So
the
those will
second,
come next.
thank you for that clarification. The second thing is, I wanted to ask staff to look at, there's been a couple of car sales, what do you call them, car lots?
Car dealership?
Car dealerships that, what I've observed is that they're loading and unloading vehicles for transportation, using the public right-of-way, neighboring businesses. And I'd like to see if we can make a recommendation or have direct staff to look at making recommendations to making that a specific business license, so that they have to show enough space on their property. You know, hey, as part of your business, you have to have enough space to load and unload vehicles when you're transporting them in or out. Is that something that
We
is
can look into
commissioners-
that.
So I'd like to ask for that. Thank you.
I just said that, I have a recommendation or a question. I know that I've seen throughout the city more sidewalks going, which is great, in different subdivisions and stuff. But I also see Lower Valley Water District trash cans right next on the right-of-way. And when that sidewalk is built, it pushes it out a little bit further out into the street. Now, I know they allow it or whatnot, since they probably have an easement right-of-way, Lower Valley, next to the street or whatnot, but a recommendation on something like that maybe bringing up is, maybe if the resident does have one of those 4-yarders containers or whatnot, maybe having like an offset on their property so that that container can be, located inside the property instead of outside right next to the street and the sidewalk, if possible.
And the right of way, okay.
Yeah, they shouldn't be placing them on the sidewalk.
Well, I think, in addition to that, is the new sidewalks are going up, but if we don't have code enforcement out there to enforce them, parking their cars on top of the sidewalk would be nice,
As well,
because
yes.
they're parking their cars on top of the
No.
sidewalk now.
That isn't,
So I see sometimes they have, the property, they have their frontage on their property, they have like a little offset or whatnot, so they can install that trash can on there. And it makes it easier even for the truck, for the loading truck to pick it up or whatnot. But-
Right.
And aside from it being an eyesore, you're driving and you've got all these trash containers butt up right against your right of way and stuff. Maybe to hide them up a little bit might help out, but again.
we
No, I
can
mean,
see
it's
what the
also-
ordinance currently says, and
And some of this, I think, also falls under, traffic citations, like parking your car on a sidewalk.
Right,
Or obstructing like a right of way when you're loading or unloading stuff, so they can get actually a ticket from a cop.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're getting those.
They're not.
they're not.
And don't get me wrong, I like those containers and stuff, but I just, not the location of, of where they're allowing them to be or whatnot.
Right, or where they're being set. I know by experience that I've ordered a dumpster when I have to do my yard work, and I do all my oleanders. And Lower Valley will not place them on your property, number one, okay? It has to be outside of the fence line, okay? Which is actually from the fence to the roadway. So it's actually on the right-of-way from the city, and I have that by experience, is I tried to get a dumpster inside my yard, and they said no. They will not put the dumpster inside a yard or gated area. So that might be a problem, but I think that there has to be some kind of a control where,
where if there's not enough room in the right-of-way, they
Right.
can't order those dumpsters, they can't place them.
right, or.
They have to go with the smaller ones.
Right, or I think also is that you get into the habit of having it there all the time, when I only order it for 30 days and I get rid of it, but I think it's just a custom thing because they're not really that expensive to get them.
When you guys talk about the dumpsters, what
Yeah, the big
size of
ones.
dumpsters are, okay,
Well,
like,
they
It's a
come,
4-yarder.
yeah, they
oh, okay,
actually,
like the really big,
Yeah.
yeah, they come in 2s and 4s and 6 and 8s, and any residential can actually order them. So I think maybe there should be some kind of limitations as to how long you can keep a dumpster and how big of a dumpster you can order.
Well, they lease
Even
them
if there's-
monthly.
Even
Yeah.
if they can find an agreement, right, on
Yeah.
maybe putting it
Someplace.
I
somewhere.
think once you
different
guys are
position.
bringing this up, it's reminding me that this had come up in the past. And I think the city tried to talk to Lower Valley Water District about it, but I'm not sure. It was something about that they were gonna drop them off where they were gonna drop them off. And the city was trying to make them put it, so it's not in the
Somewhere
right of way. We could
Can
look
we-
into
we
it
can
again,
review
yeah, cause I remember it coming up a few years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Body, real quick, as a municipality, the city could take over that part of the Lower Valley Water District, right? The trash cans?
Cities operate their own solid waste. But that is a function that the city can operate. Now,
Yeah.
taking it over from that, those
Yeah.
are logistics
Yeah.
and, above our,
Yeah. Anyways.
If I may add something a little bit, it'll be the speed bumps or humps.
oh, did you see that they started painting them?
They- no,
Yeah,
where
that
did
was
they
an
start?
item, that was an item, if not this past, it couldn't have been this past city council meeting. It might have been 2 or 3 city council
Okay.
meetings ago. They requested the speed humps and that the sidewalk, the school crosswalks.
Crosswalks, yeah.
So they've already completed the school crosswalks, repainting, and they're working on painting the humps
Throughout the whole city?
throughout the city.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
That'll work.
And one last point, my apology. Correct me if I'm wrong, if some, let's say a neighbor's parking on their own sidewalk and the sidewalk cracks, that neighbor is responsible for that repair, right? Even if the city does it, that neighbor would have to pay for that. So for example, we live on the corner on a park, and sometimes people will park, too much on the sidewalk. And I'll let them know, hey man, the sidewalk's public, but if you break it, I've got to pay for it because it's on my house. Hey neighbor, it's easy for you to park, especially in our neighborhood, Jardín de Flores, where it's one of those, it's not a curve, it's a rounded curve.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, just as a point of clarification, you don't want to do that because you as the homeowner will have to pay for that. Right? Am I correct on that?
That sounds right, but I would need to refer to the ordinance to
That-
verify that.
So I have a question. So how many officers do you have that are code enforcement?
3. I thought you were gonna ask me police officers, I don't know that answer, but 3.
Okay,
Code
so you have
enforcement, there are 3.
officers, and they cover
The entire
all
city.
of the city. Okay, so we have a problem. Okay,
That's a lot of the
Okay.
problem, because, when you
Yeah.
guys bring up the issues of, how come they don't get cited for this, or how come there's no follow-up, they need like 20 people.
absolutely. So what do we do to change that?
So then,
Budget,
the budget, so then the city needs
conversations
to
with
put
the
in the
city
budget,
and,
which then means going to the taxpayers to ask for more money, or a bond, or, when they increase the tax rates in the fall, and we go back and forth on that process, like, so that's another fight, is they say, yeah, we just need, another $500,000. That's where then there's a fight, so.
or everybody can just follow the rules. That seems cheaper, everybody follow the rules.
We can always report to code ordinance, telephone, email, on the city, there's a.
City source app,
City source app.
if you ever see
application.
anything,
You can
if
take
it's an
pictures of lights that are
emergency,
out, add it to the report.
non-emergency number for dispatch,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, so to add to it, yes, so there is a city source app that, like any other public can download it on your iPhone or your Android. Just put City Socorro, and then you can do it anonymously, or you can even sign in and you can report stuff for code enforcement.
Okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you.
Okay, I just gotta share something. It came up, okay, so you guys brought it up. So, okay, your question on the 3 code enforcement, okay, so a year ago, it wasn't this fall, it was a year ago. One of the trees on my property was shedding its leaves, and a lot of those leaves were in the parkway and on the street, okay? Half the leaves were still on the tree, and our weather, if it gets windy and like today, a good cold front will knock all the leaves off, right? So that time we hadn't had that cold snap still, but the leaves were falling, half the leaves were on the street, and I got a warning from code enforcement. And I looked up the code, and you're not supposed to have leaves in the parkway that belong, you gotta rake them up, you gotta clean them up, and it's in there. But the fact that I got for leaves, I didn't know if I was laugh it off or just I got angry, and then I was like, I can't believe it. But just the thought of having a code enforcement officer go out there, they put it on my fence and the whole thing, and I was like, oh my God. Anyway, I raked the leaves, got it done. They gave me 3 days or 7 days or whatever to clean it up, but that was nuts. It was just.
I think also,
Maybe somebody complained.
I was gonna say, it sounds like a
One of the neighbors,
neighbor's
but all the neighbors got the leaves. I mean, they all have trees. Everybody has trees. I didn't ask them if they got a citation also, but maybe one of my neighbors complained. But
well,
if I was a code enforcement officer, I'd have gone out there. I would have just rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh
Yes.
my God,
but
seriously.
it's so ironic that he brings that up, because the same thing happened to me, and I was on vacation. But I had a gardener that was going over to water, and he was out there raking up leaves when the code enforcement said, you better have them all picked up. I'll be back this afternoon. And so he calls me and he says, you know, I'm raking up leaves, and he sees me raking up leaves, and he said he was giving me a warning, and that he would be back and he would give me a ticket. That's the same thing, and it happened around the same time that
Same
it
time,
happened to me.
yeah. So someone out there was on a,
Yeah, on a leaf pickup.
On leaf duty, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I gotta go.
Oh,
Sorry
sorry.
about that. So.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ressa.
Thank you, Mr. Reza.
Bye.
So I think the one thing that is important to all of us is that the city of Socorro needs better code enforcement. And of course, that entails us to have more officers to do it. Because when I've had to call, the response time is very poor, you know, and you get very discouraged, you know, to report something and nothing happens. And so I think we're all in the same boat. I listen to Mr. Cisneros. I see the big semi-trucks parked on Alameda in the middle lane, offloading cars, because they don't want to take it inside the yard because they can't back up their trucks then. But I think that's important that code enforcement gets out there and gives out citations so that they go and find a different spot to offload their cars and move their cars into a parking lot. I totally agree.
Thank you.
I have another question. What's our, as zoning board, I guess, members, what are the, are there any rules or recommendations maybe as far as us being able to go to city council during their meetings and give them our whatever, our grievances, our opinions on items that we look at or on stuff like this that we're bringing up right now? I don't wanna, I don't know, is that something that's ever happened in the
You are
past?
there
Do any of, does anybody?
You are appointed by the city council, so I would believe that the first step would be to talk to your representative who appointed you, because they appointed you to the board for your expertise, for your knowledge, for probably for various reasons. And then they could then appropriately channel that through the city manager for things that we need to address. I'm here, I'm going to take these recommendations and what I gather, I will share it with you and share it with the city manager as the director of all of the city departments to see where these fit in with the city's directives and then just priorities and with this, overall the city's workflow, but then there's also the city council that can bring up items to the city manager.
So I see that for like items in general, right? Like what we're discussing right now. What about items that we feel strongly about, like the track that we looked at today? We had voted for denial on that, but then city council, which is, they have the right to do that, but can we as a board show up on, not as a board, but as members of the community or members of the zoning board, can we show up on a Thursday or at a city council meeting and give them our reasons for, I know that you state the reasons for denial.
Yes, so our report.
But can we do that in person?
So,
Can we come in and as,
As
maybe
speak
even as a
public, but
citizen?
As a
like at
citizen,
public-
just acknowledge that you have a role here at the Planning and
during-
Zoning Commission.
Like during public comment for that particular item?
I don't see why they wouldn't be able to, but
yeah, I was gonna say, so you can, all you guys are allowed as citizens to go. You can attend all the city council meetings. You can sign up for public comment. And Lorraine is right. So you also then wanna, if it's kind of a planning zoning type issue, not specific matters, well, let's just say you wanted to say, well, I wanna talk about sidewalks and I got an issue with sidewalks. You go in and tell them, well, I also, hey guys, I happen to be on the planning zoning commission as well. You should remind them, tell them that. But then tell them, I'm here in my personal capacity. I just got this issue. You guys need to do something with it. On the specific items, really it's kind of treated like, and I'll analogize this to court, but if you like, let's say you go to a trial court, you go in front of a jury, you have your case, they make a decision. if somebody doesn't like it, they can appeal it to the appeals court. It goes to appeals court, and the legal terminology is called de novo, which means new. So you get a new shot at it again with the second judge or a second court, without any opinion from the first one. So really, that's the way this is supposed to operate, is that once they come in front of you, you guys are kind of like the judges on this case. You hear it, you say yes or no. Then they're allowed to go to the next one above and get basically like a new trial again, or a new hearing. So you really can't tilt it either way at that point, but on your opinions, like Lorraine said, in her planning zoning report, she can actually then add more detail to it if you want to state, and you don't have to, like, except on the planning, you had the question about, do we need to do a written report? You don't have to, because Lorraine does that, she does the report. But if you want to more specific and say, okay, here's the 5 reasons why we said no, blah, 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 this is it's like a bigger deal, you can ask her to do it. But yeah, you can go in and generally talk, it's just not on that specific item, because they're trying to get a fair shake on see if they can get it approved, or, or forget,
But to elaborate, I would make that addition to, say, the staff report, and say there were 3 votes for, 1 vote against, and 1 abstain. And if they ask,
what were the reasons
Yeah.
for why it was denied? And then we'll say, okay, well, these issues
the
came
concerns
up.
about it being within abutting residential neighborhoods, and that being different than other examples.
So like in this case, like today for that one item, there was a no and there was an abstain. So if we give our reason for our particular vote, you include that.
Would include it in the staff
meeting,
report.
In the minutes, and then that's presented to city council for the reason why it was.
It
But
may
we
not-
wouldn't be
voted a
discussing it
certain way.
outside of the,
Yeah, we usually, I think on the reports, it won't go that into detail, it may just say denied or whatever. But if there's something you want to specifically say, then you can let the secretary know, so that it kind of makes it into the minutes. So, okay, here's the reason. Now, you still want to keep it somewhat brief, because otherwise she'll be writing pages and pages every night. That's why it's a little bit more simple, approved or denied, or approved with recommendations. But if there's something like, oh, I really want to say this and put this on the record, so it makes it in the minutes and the report, then you can say, we denied it because we asked for a traffic impact study, they didn't want to do it, or something X, Y, and Z. That report does get to city council, and then I'll tell you guys the process too, is that, so Lorraine does her report, it goes there. If you ever see the backup for city council online, you'll see the report from P&Z after you guys decided something, what it looks like. It's usually like a 1-page memo, 2 pages maybe. I think like on today's, you get your own reports to P&Z, it looks like something similar. But then I work with Jim Martinez, who's the city attorney. I usually tell him what happened here before every city council meeting. So, because I have to give him a heads up, hey, there was 20 neighbors here, they were upset about an item, this is what's gonna happen, here's how P&Z voted. So I give them an update before every city council, what you guys, on every item that you guys vote on. That's on the legal side, I do it. So they kind of have an idea, yeah.
And if I remember correctly, those reports, I think they list who voted yes and no, or no?
no, they haven't.
don't?
They've just been approved or denied.
Or denied.
But we can
But I-
update that, to reflect what the vote was.
Yeah. But I've been to plenty of city council meetings, and Lorraine does a great job of saying, it was approved by everybody, it was denied. She does add a little bit more detail, so that's.
I think, just as a note, I think what I would like to see is that if this particular master plan variance had been denied by the planning and zoning, I don't actually recall, so, and I don't know, maybe I wasn't here then. But in either case is that when it's denied and the staff knows that it's going to city council, is there a way for us to either get a heads up or something so that we would know, hey, you know what, maybe I just want to go to city council meeting, and maybe I just want to do an open records or open and let them know as a resident of Socorro, not as a commissioner, but as a resident, the reasons why I would not like to have that there, okay? How do we know? It was denied, but it went to city council. How do we, as commissioners, know that something is headed to the appeals court?
So, yeah, so 100% of everything that goes from here, next step on the next meeting goes to city council generally.
Okay, so
Gen-
what
gen-
happens today will be there Thursday,
Right.
okay?
Sometimes if there's not enough time, like, because you got to post 3 days in advance. But sometimes with Lorraine, and what we do is that we'll put preliminary plat here today, thinking, okay, there'll be some action taken, so that next city council, because of the timelines, if we don't do it within 30 days, then it gets automatically approved.
And there is
So
also
it's set
the,
up ahead of time, something.
and the extra step of introduction at city council at one meeting and then being heard at the second meeting. So it does go to city council twice. And then there's public notice and the city council agendas. What we could do is include you in the emails that receive the city council agendas when they go out on Monday, so that you can look through the city council agendas.
Oh, that would be awesome,
But those are available to everyone on the website.
okay.
Yeah, and if it's not on this meeting, then it's usually like the next meeting.
the
'cause
next
it's just
The
too short of
timing.
Time, yeah.
Because city council agenda items are due the Thursday before.
Okay.
And I think where the questions are kind of headed, and not that this is what I'm thinking, or not anything that I'm thinking should happen, but in the city of El Paso, the Planning and Zoning Commission is the final word on approval to denials. Is that correct? I think when it goes to the city of El Paso Planning and Zoning Commission, if they approve it, it's approved, right? If they deny it, it's denied.
I'm not sure, sometimes on certain items you can do it that way. A lot of times it does go to city council, maybe, they may do a little bit different, maybe if it's on a consent agenda and you don't really see it. But yeah, I'm not familiar enough with how they do it.
Yeah,
there.
so, and I might be wrong on that, but I think that's what happens in the city of El Paso.
Yeah.
Not that that's what I'm thinking, and that's not what I'm thinking we should move to. But let's say, just as a point of order, in order for something like that to happen, it would have to change on the city charter, right? If like, let's say there was enough, if we wanted to do and I don't know, this is more of a question.
Yeah.
Is that something that could be changed if it was something that we wanted to change as a community? Not that I'm saying we should do that, I'm just saying, it's my understanding the City of El Paso Planning and Zoning Commission is kind of one of the final words, but.
So, yeah, generally is that you don't, anybody that's an applicant, they should be able to have a hearing on something. And if they want to appeal it, there should be some avenue to appeal it, right? Whether it to be a city council or even court. Ultimately, the very last backstop here is that anything that happens here, or even in city council, if it gets denied, it can go to court. Somebody always has the right to do that, and they can't waive that right. But yeah, it is, you're right, so it's in the city charter, it's also in our city code, and then you've got the bylaws, so yeah, it requires like an amendment to the charter, which means an election,
And again, not that that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying as a point of order, that's where it would have to change.
But yeah, this is
I
not
don't
meant to
think-
be, and it's also under the Texas Local Government Code, it's not meant to be the final stop for decision-making.
Because we're not elected.
Yeah, some of that too is that if you're a volunteer, on a volunteer basis, and you're not actually voted by the public. So, because then the public would come back and say, hey, wait a minute, you guys are making final decisions on important things in my life on real estate.
Correct.
I never elected you, you were appointed by somebody else, and so that's why, that's why there's then accountability with the city council, that if they don't like that they did something, well, then they can vote them out in the next election. But with volunteer appointments, the public doesn't really have control over it.
Yeah.
I guess if somebody really complained here, they could complain to city council, and they, I guess they could review. I haven't really seen that happen.
No.
Only like absences or something
Yeah.
like that, or
That's it.
unfilled, but.
That would give the zoning board a lot of power.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
that's,
political
But
at that point.
nobody gives them power.
So I know of too, well, the city of El Paso in years past, it was the personal experience that city council, they would just take what the zoning board was recommending, and then vote along those lines, and then that was it. But it was their option, they didn't, it was going to the city council, and that's just how that particular city council viewed it. I'm thinking on certain serious issues they've taken, but minor stuff, it was what the zoning board was saying. There's another, I brought it up at this meeting in the past, but there's another small municipality outside of Austin where there's one particular zoning board there that's it. That's like the law. And whatever they say, that's what city council says. But it's their decision just to go that way, that particular city council, along the lines of what you're saying.
Yeah.
But those zoning board, they have a lot of power. That one that I've been dealing with, I guess, or my client has been dealing with outside of Austin. And so I look at what happens here and I'm like, well, I get it, I understand, but that's why I bring up, can we go at least voice our opinion without,
Yeah, I think so. Like, if you want to talk about even generally about planning, zoning, and
Yeah.
you can talk about all sorts of things there, like, you guys have the right to do it. But it's just commenting on specific cases. Once it's been heard here, the person gets a new shot there, and just
Yeah.
based on the report, so. Because even if you went up there, city council could say, like, kind of like how you guys do it. You can ask to hear from somebody if they're here, or you don't have to hear them. I mean, you have to hear the applicant. But if they got extra people here, you don't necessarily have to ask them to come up if you don't have a question. So they could just ignore you too, which would be probably even worse. If you sign up and sit there, But yeah, you're right, so in the zoning, and I think I told you guys this before, is that in Texas, is that they've tried to make things easier for developers. That's just like a Texas Republican pro-business thing, outside of the control of this area. So in the legislature, they've passed all these rules to expedite things, the 30-day thing on plats. It's to make it go through quick and easy and to take away power from the zoning boards. And even with, local city council and stuff, every year they come up with new laws and they're trying to take away more power from local government and give it to the state legislature on a lot of things, so that you can't, we have to kind of keep updated every year when the new laws come out as what changed and what can't do or have to do, or, but yeah, they're making it a lot tougher. And that's just, the developers, I'm not saying anything that's not a secret, but they give a lot of money to the lobbyists in Austin, and they get them to change the laws. And especially over like smaller cities like Socorro, like they are trying to kind of push things through, so that's just kind of the reality of things. But you guys always have that right. I mean, you are the body here first that hears everything on planning, zoning related, And it's probably the most powerful, I would say, still commission among the city commissions. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's important stuff. It's, the most money actually comes through the planning zoning department, all the permit fees and everything. If you look at the budget, it's public. So it does matter. It's a big deal, and,
How many new city council members are coming in?
2, and they have both been sworn in.
They've been.
Representative District 4,
Have
Gina
they-
Cordero, and, I'm sorry, Gina Cordero is Representative District 3. Representative District 4 is Irene Rojas.
And so they've sat into their first,
They have
they have,
at least attended one meeting.
okay. I'm good.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I'm sorry, I wanted to apologize. So the app that I was talking about, you're gonna look for it, it's gonna be under Socorro Central. In there, like I said, you can create anonymously requests for code enforcement, as well as other stuff. For example, you can request street light issues or public works, animal services, or to report street issues. Any member of the public can go ahead and do that. But yes, it's Socorro Central, and it's going to show our city logo.
Thank you, Alfredo. Moving on to item number 10, Planning and Zoning Department Report. Ms. Camito?
Thank you. I'd like to introduce our new planner. Armando Morales joined us last week, and you will be seeing more of Mr. Morales at our meetings. I'll just keep today's report brief. Since it was mentioned, the sidewalks Phase 3 project continues. They are currently working on Fray Holguín and Flor Preciosa. And the El Paso MPO has set out a meeting invitation for an open house, which will be held January the 15th from 5:30 to 7 at the Black Box Theater on Burgess High School. And this is to discuss the 2024, the 2052 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This is the long-range transportation plan for the El Paso MPO, which Socorro is a part of. So I will forward that meeting invitation to you all to see if you can attend and provide input regarding the transportation projects in the region and the importance of including our projects.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Camino. Thank you, Ms. Camino. Moving on to item number 11, consider and take action on the adjournment of this meeting. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion made by Andrew Arroyos to adjourn, second by Yolanda Rodriguez. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstain? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned at 6:53. Thank you all for coming.